When I joined the Foreign Service in 1982, I was not the norm. Many of my colleagues had gone to Ivy League schools, and I'd gone to segregated high schools, as you've already heard, and to LSU as a consequence of a lawsuit. Not to mention, I was joining an organization facing 2 class action lawsuits that applied to me, one led by Black officers in the Foreign Service and the other by women. And yet, I had an extraordinary 35-year career that culminated as the Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs. To me, that represents the progress and the promise of America. Still, I never expected that I would have the chance to step into the shoes of so many luminaries, leaders like Jeane Kirkpatrick, who was the permanent representative when I first joined the service, or my own mentor, Ambassador Ed Perkins, the first African-American ambassador to South Africa, a UN ambassador, and a giant among diplomats. Or the iconic Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, followed most recently by 4 other women, Ambassadors Susan Rice, Samantha Powers, Nikki Haley, and Kelly Craft, my most recent predecessor. Like my mentors, role models, and predecessors, I strongly believe diplomacy is an irreplaceable tool in the work of advancing America's interests and building a better world. Throughout my career, from Jamaica to Nigeria, Pakistan to Switzerland, and as ambassador to Liberia, I've learned that effective diplomacy means more than shaking hands and staging photo ops. It means developing real, robust relationships. It means finding common ground and managing points of differentiation. It means doing genuine, old-fashioned, people-to-people diplomacy. President Biden epitomizes that approach. He believes in considering every diplomatic tool in the toolkit, including bringing stronger language and tougher tactics to the table when needed. You can be assured that will be my approach too, if I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed. Of all of our diplomatic tools, perhaps our most powerful instrument is the United Nations itself. The UN is uniquely poised to take on our shared global challenges, from countering terrorism to promoting the rights of women and girls to feeding tens of millions living on the brink of famine. As Ralph Bunche put it in his Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech, the United Nations is the greatest peace organization ever dedicated to the salvation of mankind's future on Earth. But that's only true if America is leading the way. When America shows up, when we are consistent and persistent, when we exert our influence in accordance to our values, the United Nations can be an indispensable institution for advancing peace, security, and our collective well-being. If instead we walk away from the table and allow others to fill the void, the global community suffers, and so do American interests. In particular, we know China is working across the UN system to drive an authoritarian agenda that stands in opposition to the founding values of the institution, American values. Their success depends on our continued withdrawal. That will not happen on my watch. From climate change to COVID-19, non-proliferation to mass migration, technological disruptions to human rights violations, today's problems are urgent, they are complex, and they are global. Meeting these challenges means meeting with our fellow nations, especially in the world's most important diplomatic forum. To that end, before I answer your questions, let me outline 3 key priorities that will guide my work as U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, if confirmed. First, our leadership must be rooted in our core values: support for democracy, respect for universal human rights, and the promotion of peace and security. Second, we must have the courage to insist on reforms that make the UN efficient and effective. And third, as U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, if confirmed, I would seek to develop a strong partnership with this committee, which I've had the great pleasure of working with often throughout my career in the Foreign Service. I want the conversation and the collaboration we began today to continue throughout my service.